Hello and welcome to All 32. My name is Arabia, and here we talk all things football. Joining me today is a very special guest, one of, if not the best defensive back to ever play the game of football. This 15-year NFL legend and Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee still to this day holds the record for the most passes defended in the NFL, tied for most Pro Bowl selections for a defensive back, most interceptions in a Pro Bowl, and still holds various other records in the NFL. He's a husband, a father, an icon. Welcome to the show, Mr. Champ Bailey. Thank you for joining. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thanks for that nice introduction. I appreciate that.
Of course, all facts. So I was kind of reminding myself of some of your NFL records, and people kind of put their nose up at the NFL Pro Bowl these days because y'all were playing back then. And
Yeah,
today it's like flag and drills and stuff like that. So it's still very impressive. Those four interceptions in one Pro Bowl game, y'all was playing.
we were playing, and it's funny. I kind of saw it gradually decline over time. Once guys started making a significant amount of money and, they start worrying about their health a little more. Brady never showed up to the Pro Bowl. So, those little things always played a role in how we gotten to where we are now, where they don't even play anymore at all. So,
Yeah.
it's a little fluff. And,
Yeah, I know it's kind
I
of
get
hard.
it
Tom
though.
Brady has the most Pro Bowl selections, but he also has a lot of Super Bowls. So it's hard to make the Pro Bowl sometimes when you have a Super Bowl coming right up and you don't
That's
want to miss
right.
it.
That's right.
A lot of people say the game is getting soft these days with the hip drop tackle rule that they implemented in the offseason. And so, yeah, I hear that a
Yeah,
lot.
the game is changing, it's evolving, and we got to expect it. We just got to be able to adapt.
Exactly. Just got to adapt. So both of your former teams coming into the season were underdogs.
Right.
The Broncos had an early playoff exit, but the Commanders are still going. Were you able to track these two teams throughout the season from underdog in August to both playoff teams in January?
No doubt. I think what people have to remember is, and it's pretty evident, they have rookie quarterbacks. So the expectations of a team with a rookie quarterback are always low. You're not expected to win a whole lot of games. You're lucky to get to 500. But they both finished over 500, made it into the playoffs, and had great seasons. And now the future looks bright because it appears right now they got the situation at quarterback figured out. So it rubs off on everybody. You're a natural leader at the quarterback position, and if you got the right voice, the right talent, sky's the limit for that organization.
Yeah, and these two quarterbacks are both in the conversation for potential rookie of the year. So shout out to both of these
Right.
organizations for pretty much hitting in the draft. They've been neck and neck. Jaden Daniels more so than Bo Nix in the early in the season, but Bo Nix definitely picked things up towards the third half of the second half of the season and has been doing really, really well.
Right.
So today we're going to talk about Washington's DB room, specifically Marshon Lattimore, who the
Right.
Commanders traded the Saints for during the season. Lattimore has a rich history with Mike Evans. So we're going to get into that. It was a highly anticipated matchup. But before we get into Lattimore Evans matchup, Champ, what are your overall takeaways from the Buccaneers Washington game and their wild card win?
Well, it's really the situations that they won. I think when you think about, the NFL in general, man, you have to win situations. So when they got to the point where they had to drive down the field, get in field goal range, and hit the game-winning kick, it was beautiful to watch because it's so many games in those instances where things don't go your way. But we've seen time and time again all year how Jaden Daniels steps up in those moments. And usually that's when rookies fold. That's when they show their youth and the inexperience. But for some reason they figured it out. And we saw it all year. And I'm like, this is what they've been preparing for, these moments. So perfect, I guess matchup for them. We could talk more about Lattimore in that matchup, but overall, they did what they had to do to win the game. And, fortunate enough, they on to the next week against the number one seed. So I give them a lot of credit for handling the situations they had to handle and going out winning the game on a last second kick.
Yeah, that's something that you said, like you said, they've done all season. And you look at a team like the Chiefs, they don't blow people out by 20, 30, 40
Yeah,
points. they just find ways to win. And I feel like really good football teams, you have to win close, you have to win ugly, and you have to win in those clutch situations. And it seems like Jaden Daniels, that entire offense, and that defense, shout out to Joe Witt Jr., who was able to take that defense from being bottom of the league last year to now being able to hold their own. And I think that's one of the standards the Commanders were looking for this season. Can we compete against really good teams? Can we dominate bad teams? And I think they've shown that they can, which is a huge leap this season. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let's get into this Lattimore Evans matchup. Very, very highly anticipated. I think probably of all the cornerbacks and wide receivers in the league right now, these two are the most like Tom and Jerry like, where
Yeah.
they it was just on site whenever they see each other. So we are gonna get into that. Um, let's see. Okay. So I'm just going to show this drive really quick so everybody has an idea of what's going on here. This was the final drive before halftime. The Bucs scored a touchdown here, tying the game 10-10. 7 plays, 74 yards, took a minute and 42 seconds. Mike Evans had 4 targets, 3 completions. One of those targets resulted in a defensive pass interference on Lattimore. So including the penalty, 43 of the 74 yards in the scoring drive were to Evans with Lattimore in coverage. So, Champ, let's go through 2 of these plays. We're going to go through the first play in this drive, and we're also going to go through the final play in this drive, which, of course, resulted in a touchdown. And, a lot of people were saying during the game that they weren't really happy with Lattimore's performance. They kind of wanted Mike Sanders, though, to come in. Benjamin St. Juste has been catching a lot of flack in that secondary room. But I'm curious how you feel about his performance, because obviously your opinion is probably the best to ever do it will mean a lot. So what do you see from, let's start with this first play here.
Okay, so what is he known for? Like, let's think about who Lattimore is. And I want to say this, he's been one of my favorite players to watch and throughout his first 8 years. And I think this this is we have to be a little fair to him. He's missed some time, he's had lower body injuries, the hamstring. His game is made at the line of scrimmage. That's how he's made his name. And on this play particular, you can see there in some type of man coverage, single high safety, and he's bailing out of there. What I what what I want to know from him is because I got more questions than answers, or at least, feedback. It's more, okay, what I see him doing is playing out of his comfort zone. He is a bump and run corner. So when a guy bails like this, it tells me a few things. He's either trying to mix it up, he's not himself, he's hurt, there's something going on. And I've come back and tried to match up with guys with a bad hamstring, and it's a 50-50 chance that you're gonna win that day because you're not yourself. So I look at this, with that in mind, like he's not himself. Fortunate enough for him, he has another week. But let's look at this first play. He's bailing. He lets Mike Evans get in his blind spot, which is, savvy for a vet, and he ends up 7-8 yards often by the time he catches the ball. This is not who Lattimore is. And fortunate enough for him, he has a defense and their mentality on defense, rally to the ball. You see guys going over there and making the tackle for him. Now, I don't know how he felt, but this is my guess, is that he was trying to figure out how to play after missing some time, coming back, missing more time, and then being ready to go against Mike Evans, who's been your nemesis. I just feel like it's an unfortunate situation for him because this is what they brought him here for. This is why they brought him here. And I don't want to put too much emphasis on his performance in this game. It wasn't a great performance, and he'll tell you that. But I want to give him a little grace because I know he was dealing with some things, and the ego and the confidence that you go into these matchups with, he exudes all of that. So I'm sure he expected himself to play better, but I guarantee you this week it's going to be a different Lattimore out there.
Yeah, and
He
I
doesn't have
completely
he
agree. And
doesn't
when you
have to
think
worry
about
about
the
one guy.
temperament,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, he does. It's a different game plan when you play. It's an obvious number one against Tampa. Against Detroit, it's not an obvious. I think it is an obvious number one, but he moves all over the place. So I don't see Lattimore matching up with uh St. Brown at all. So it's one of those things, man. He dodged a bullet here, and they're able to move on from it.
Yeah, and like you said, the Lions have a Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? They have a Jameson Williams. They even have two running backs who can catch out of the backfield.
Yeah.
With the Bucs, sure, you have Mike Evans, and then after that, since they don't have Godwin, which was a huge hit to that offense, you have Jalen
Yeah.
McMillan, who has been stepping up. You have Bucky Irvin, who had one receiving touchdown as a running back. But ultimately, you know who that wide receiver one is. And like you said on the Lions, Jared Goff tends to spread the ball around, so his assignment is going to be a little bit more spread out. You're going to really rely on Jeremy Chin, on a Mike Sanders still, on a Benjamin St. Juice, whoever they have in there. So I completely agree. And also, like you said, putting Marshon Lattimore in a situation where even when he was traded, he was dealing with the injury. His first
Yeah.
game back was still high pressure because it was against his former team that just traded him, the Saints. So your first day back, you're going up against the teammates who you practice with. You know, that's a high pressure situation. And
Yeah.
now, not too much longer in the playoffs, you're expected to perform against the Tom to your Jerry, you know, the Batman to your Joker. So, like you said, it's a high pressure situation. We got to give him some grace and understand that he's dealing with a lot in the situation. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the league, and when they put you out there, they expect you to perform. So nobody's really giving him grace too much in the locker room. It's more, we got to play better. I mean, it's one and done at this point. Like you could be going home. So y- it- fortunate enough, they move on to the next week, and he
yep,
has a chance to redeem himself.
we live to see another game.
You
Okay,
know,
so here is the final play in this drive. What do you see here?
it's simple. You're man to man. Stay inside. When you're in the red zone, especially a big body receiver, you have to make them go through you. So Mike Evans, the savvy vet he is, sold the fade and came right back inside. And I'm not sure if Lattimore was expecting body presence, but when you're out wide, you can't expect any help, even if it's called for. So for me, it's just a technique issue. Just stay inside, make them go the hard route. And we've seen Mike Evans catch millions of deep balls or fades in the back of the end zone. So I understand his emphasis on defending it, but again, I would encourage him. If I could talk to him, I would encourage him at this stage in your career, when you're dealing with injuries, you're already a little older, trust your technique. You have to live with good technique. It'll get you out of a lot of problems, and it'll enable him to play a lot faster because he's not as fast as he used to be. He's dealing with injuries, lower extremities. He's never gonna be the young Marshawn again. Like it's not who he is. He has to understand. He has to rely on technique in these later years.
Yeah, so what's your opinion on, Adam Peters, who's the new GM for the Commanders, said that he wants to build a team through the draft. And I'm still kind of getting to know my GM a little bit better. He was an excellent GM for the 49ers beforehand, but he said he wants to build the team through the draft.
Yeah,
When it comes to a position like cornerback, which in my opinion is the hardest position in football, I mean, it's kind of asking you to do like these impossible things. Do you think that it's better to trade for a proven veteran at that position, or do you kind of take the risk and try to build that DB position through the draft and see how these college players translate to the league?
yeah. It's a little cliche to say build through the draft, but it's true. I think anytime you can draft your guys, it's better for you because you can develop them in house. You know what you're getting, and you resign them with the idea that they're gonna go on to be great veterans in their second contract. But it doesn't hurt to go get a young corner that's kind of coming into his own. If you can find those diamonds in the rough, you don't want to overpay on the open market, which usually happens. We see it happen with quarterbacks more than anything. But I do believe if you can find a young corner, yeah, you go get them however you can because they're hard to find. It's just
Absolutely.
you ideally
Very
want
hard
to
to
get them
find.
through the draft. It's just hard to do, man. That's why running a team is very difficult because who you evaluate and who you bring in, you want them to be long-term answers. If it doesn't work out, do you have the guts to go out and find one that potentially could become that answer? So it's a difficult job, but I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, so far so good. He hit big time this draft with Jaden Daniels and then getting our left tackle. If you can get a quarterback and
Right.
a decent left tackle in the same draft, that just accelerates your timeline. Johnny
Yep.
Newton was best available in that round. We get Luke McCaffrey, who's developing really well. We get Ben Sinnott. We get Mike Sanders still. So this draft for me
Yeah.
was A plus plus. So I'm very confident that in the offseason he'll address the needs for this team.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
we know the history of Lattimore and Evans. They're, like I said, like Tom and Jerry, things will get really chippy, really heated. Was there ever a receiver like that for you, somebody for you who is just on site every time you saw them, things get a little heated and you just kind of have a little dislike for each other where things are just like, oh, I don't know, I don't like this guy.
Yeah, I almost feel like because I don't see Mike Evans get like that with anybody else. I feel like it's Lattimore who brought that to the table initially, being the younger player. But, I would say I had some battles, but I was never I guess a shit talker, so to speak. So I wasn't that guy. So for me, it was just the battles. I could go back to Amani Toomer. He was tough. I mean, he wasn't the best receiver I played, but I had to see him twice a year when I was in Washington. So he was one of those guys. And then in Denver, I could name a few. Vincent Jackson was one. He was just tough. A offense that was loaded, a lot of weapons, with LT and Gates, and I had to deal with him. So I've had my battles, but I never had a nemesis like Evans and Lattimore. That's such a unique thing. You don't really see that a whole lot where guys had the opportunity to go up against each other time in and time out, and those battles went back and forth. So it's a unique situation between the two of them.
It really is. And I wouldn't be surprised when it's all said and done, decades from now, if they end up coming out and say, like, I have a lot of respect for that guy. Things got
Yeah.
heated because it's competition. And I feel like if you are
Oh
a
yeah.
lover of sports, you love competition. It's kind of boring if you have teams blowing people out or you have a certain level of respect for those people who can go toe to toe for you. So I feel like these guys it comes out in this way, but ultimately, I think they really deep down have a lot of respect for each
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. Why do you pay attention and give so much energy to something you don't respect? So yeah, they'll reflect on this when they're old and gray like myself. Like they'll look back and laugh at these moments, and hopefully, they can have a drink or two together and giggle about those moments. That's what it's all about. But when you're playing, man, you want to dominate everybody you face. So I get the competition.
other. Right. Yeah, a lot of times when we talk complementary football, we talk about how the offense complements the defense. It's one of the reasons
Yeah.
why when we talk about some of the best quarterbacks in the league, we mention their defense. We mentioned how Patrick Mahomes lately has had some of the best defense he has had in his years playing for the Chiefs. We mentioned Joe Burrow and how fantastic of a job he's doing with that Bengals team, but the defense just really can't keep up and hold the other team from keeping points. A lot of times we talk about complementary football. We even talk about how the pass complements the run and vice versa. Can
Yeah.
you speak to, your experience as a player and how the D line complements the secondary and vice versa?
Well, it's one of those things. The D line's not always going to get there, but what can enable them to get there is good coverage, right? You make the quarterback hold the ball. So I believe what gets lost when you think about how defenses play effectively together is pre-snap and how you disguise your coverage, you disguise your blitzes. To me, that's one of the best ways to complement each other is by fooling the offense. And it's not always about covering for 5 seconds and able to the D line to get there or getting to the quarterback in under 3 seconds, in order to get the ball out of his hands, and make a bad throw. It's really disguised before the ball even snaps. If you can fool people that way, now you have an edge, which complements everybody and complements your success. and really dictates your success. So it's a lot of factors in that, but when the D line is not getting there and they're picking up all our blitzes, they're keeping in, you know, 6 or 7 guys to block and only sending 2 or 3 receivers out. You have to find ways to nullify that by making adjustments and fooling the quarterback. So it's a lot of different ways you can complement each other. It's just being on the same page. But that comes through weeks of preparation and having the mindset to adjust in real time. Because there are moments where I can remember back when I played for the Broncos, we would blitz a lot. But then there were moments when we wouldn't blitz and we would pull out of it. Well, teams started finding ways to combat that. So we had to make adjustments. Okay, they started running pick routes on these all-out blitzes. And we went to the sideline. I could go back to a moment, one of my picks on Brady in the playoffs. 100-yard interception. And the only way we made that play was they basically started out coaching us in that time. But what me and Darren Williams did at the time was make sideline adjustments because we knew the rush would get there, but we had to hold our coverage. Like we had to make sure that we didn't get picked. So we started passing off routes, and that resulted in an interception. So that's the way you have to, you know, work together because it's not always going to work out the way you planned it. It's like, how do we make those minor adjustments? Okay, if we're going to get home, we got to make plays on the back end. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think your play definitely strengthened the D line, and a lot of defensive linemen probably have you to thank for at least part of their performance in their career. So I think for the Commanders, if we strengthen our D line, I know we have Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen in that interior. I think if we strengthen the edges, I think it'll help with our secondary as well. Like I said, that position group is one of the weaker position groups on the team that definitely needs some help. I put it that way. My eyes are on Myles Garrett, but that's a conversation for another time. Um,
Yeah. Well, look,
yeah,
that's one of those guys.
I think he needs to get out of
Every
Dodge, and I think
team
he
needs to
needs
be
to go
looking at
somewhere.
him. Yeah.
What'd you say?
Every team needs to look at Miles Garrett. So
Yes.
he is the deal. So
Yes, he is. He's the real deal. We have a really good quarterback on a rookie contract, so I think it could really
yeah,
work out for everybody.
absolutely.
Coming up, the Commanders have the Lions and Detroit in the divisional round of the playoffs. The Lions are have some of my favorite DBs in the league with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. Brian Branch was a nickel cornerback. They moved him to safety because they didn't want to take him off the field in their base package. So they call them smash and grab. That's their nickname for those two DBs, smash and grab. So that should be a very interesting matchup.
It will be.
Do you have a prediction for that game, or are you just going to kind of let it play out?
Ooh, you know, Jaden Daniels again is the wild card for me. And as the season was progressing, I was waiting for that moment for somebody to figure him out, and that hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened yet. Like he's had some struggles here and there, just like every quarterback. You don't win every drive, but he's always won the situations that matter. And that's the same thing we see Patrick Mahomes doing. So if they can do that, they'll be fine. What I worry about is Detroit's offense. They're so explosive. They give you everything to think about. Anybody's a potential receiver, anybody's a potential passer. So you have to be ready for everything. So preparation is going to be key, but I think more or less the fundamentals are going to be key in this game. They have to tackle well. When they let Gibbs get loose, he's a problem. When you don't put a cap on these deep plays from Jameson Williams is a deep play waiting to happen, but so is Laporta. So it's it's not one person, and they do a good job of using all their weapons. We mentioned St. Brown, he's an all-pro. But when you watch them, sometimes he just kind of disappears, and then all of a sudden he shows up. Well, that's by design. They don't want to be one-dimensional. So we have to find a way to keep a lid on things, but be a great tackling team. Do not let big runs happen or big passes. You
Yeah.
make them go the long route, it'll be difficult for them. And then when you get in the red zone, gotta buckle up, lock it down, and hold them to field goals. The more field goals they kick, the better off they'll be in the end.
Absolutely agree. This should be a really, really good game. Interesting matchup. Two coaches that really go for it on fourth down. So coaching
Yeah.
decisions will be very, very interesting. Another tidbit, Tom Brady is the minority owner of the Raiders. The Raiders need a head coach who's one of the hottest names in the coaching carousel, offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. So it will be interesting to see how Tom Brady calls the game with that potential bias. But thank you
Yeah.
so much, Chan Bailey, for joining me. Really appreciate it. What do you have going on? Do you want to shout out anybody or say what you got going on?
Not really. I just want to shout out you. I mean, I love the work you do. I mean, the insight you have. I don't think people really give you enough credit for how much knowledge you have about the game. I mean, I think it's impressive and needs to be seen more. So, congrats to you. And I'll save my plug for our next, our next segment and the next time we talk. So this won't be the last time. So good
Okay,
luck to
thank you
you.
so much. I
Yes,
really, really
ma'am.
appreciate it. Can't wait till the next time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good talking to you.
You too. Bye.